No, it's not bad writing.
It's dysgraphia. If you don't know what it is, stay until the end of the video because I'm going to tell you what dysgraphia is, why this dysgraphia is caused and how we can solve it.
Hello, how are you? Welcome to this video.
I am Juan Jose Millan. I am a teacher and I have a degree in psychopedagogy, and we are going to address the issue of dysgraphia, which is a very important issue because on many occasions its value is taken away thinking that it is simply bad lyrics, and on many occasions it can have great consequences in school performance. We are going to see some things because the first thing about it is that, contrary to what has been commented on many occasions or what is often thought, litigation itself does not have to have a neurological basis. On some occasions it does present it, however, in those cases we would no longer be talking about litigation, but we would be talking about a very different situation. Therefore, it would not be a litigation understood as such. Many times, both from schools and from families, it is thought that it is something evolutionary. On many occasions it is thought that the handwriting will improve, that this calligraphy will improve, and in many cases he begins to write more. As we will see later when I tell you how to remedy this dysgraphia, it is not the solution and it will not improve on its own if it is a dysgraphia. So we have to work in a very systematic way, and the first thing is to make a good assessment of the dysgraphia. There are different tools to assess dysgraphia, however, many of them are applied only up to ages that do not exceed primary education, and in many adolescents, even in adults, this occurs and is observed on a daily basis, in an irregular letter like the one we have seen at the beginning, which can be understood as dysgraphia. It is necessary to assess it, and it can also be assessed in adulthood and also in adolescence, and it is necessary to see what is causing this dysgraphia. We can differentiate between two types of dysgraphia. On the one hand we would have motor or motor dysgraphia, and on the other hand we would have what we would call specific dysgraphia. Both are very different. We are going to see how they differ because it is very important to know it to be able to identify it well and then be able to work in those areas necessary to improve this letter. When we talk about motor misfortune, we have to take into account that we write by hand. This is more than obvious, right? However, we have to take into account that the hand is synchronized in its movements and the hand is complex because we have fingers. The fingers have phalanges, the four main fingers have 3, and the thumb has 2. Then we would have the carpal bones, which are those that extend through what we call the palm of the hand. Then we would come to the wrist, which is the carpus, which is an area with many, very small bones, with great importance to each and every one of them. Then we would have the forearm, which is the part that would go from the wrist to the elbow, and from the elbow to the shoulder we would have the arm. In this case, what we have to be very clear about is that there is a logic in the segmentation of the movements of the entire arm, from the shoulder to the end of the fingers. That is why it is very important to work on this segmentation first. How is an appropriate segmentation carried out? Well, it's very simple. First we will have to observe some gross movements that involve the entire arm, from the shoulder, through the forearm to the fingers. They are thick movements, what we call movements, in which everything goes in a single displacement. Everything moves at once. Then we will have a second phase in which the first segmentation occurs. Here the bones that are related to the arm and the forearm bones are going to be segmented. Therefore, the movements will be different. When we see a child write, we will see that he makes these types of movements. It does not do the previous one, which is so, but it does it this way. Generally, these movements tend to occur at the level of segmentation in early childhood education, especially when we reach first primary education. It is understood that these movements have to be already worked on and achieved in school. Subsequently, the next segmentation process will be that of the forearm with the carpal and metacarpal bones. That is, the student will no longer write with the entire arm. He will not even write with the forearm, but instead we are going to start to see a finer movement, not as thick as the one we saw at the beginning of the full arm. This movement is very important because it will give us a lot of precision. On many occasions this is where we find the first problem. Children who still write with their forearms in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, or even adolescents who do so. You can see this from home and from the classroom. It is very simple. You just have to observe what is moving and what is not moving when you write. The second segmentation process would occur through the hand. That is to say, what we are going to be interested in here is that the schoolboy no longer only writes with his whole hand, with all that would be the play of the wrist, but rather makes movements with his finger. Obviously he is going to have to move around the sheet of paper, but we are already interested in this movement, and that is the point at which fine motor skills are the finest movement that we are going to be able to achieve, and that is where we can write correctly and write well. This is important to see because this is one of the main points that this dysgraphia usually causes. Therefore, working on it is very simple, and it will allow us to facilitate this writing, and we will greatly reduce frustration because they are, generally, school children who do not write badly because they want to or because they are not capable of writing, and generally what we do it is giving them more material to write, giving them copies, giving them a lot of very repetitive activity that is useless in these cases, because if he is writing with his entire arm, he will continue writing with his entire arm, no matter how much he writes. That is, we have to work to achieve appropriate and useful segmentation. When we talked about dysgraphia, we said that there are two types. This is motor dysgraphia. We have another dysgraphia, which is the specific dysgraphia, and in this case it is very different. In this case, the segmentation is appropriate, and what we have to focus our attention on is visuomotor coordination. That is, that our eye and our hand are coordinated in such a way that our hand is capable of obeying, let's say, in quotation marks, the movements that our eye presumes that that hand has to do to achieve that figure or that letter. In these cases, what we are going to observe are generally letters when they have to be curved, such as the letter A. Angular letters are observed. It is not a circular A, but an A with several angles and vice versa. When there has to be an angle, an L, for example, the L is always made a little more curved. I'm talking about the capital L, of course. In these cases it is also very easy to work. We are going to see how we can do to develop all these aspects, because in addition to this specific dysgraphia, what we are going to observe is that on many occasions, not only visual motor coordination participates in the difficulties that we observe, but also difficulties in spatial organization, a disorganized spatial organization that we have already seen. We have many videos in which we talk about spatial organization, how it influences spatial organization, laterality and body schema. Well, all this, these three aspects, laterality, schema, body and spatial organization, are also determinants when writing. Because let's not forget, we write in a space, the letters have to have a size, they have to have a height, and they have to have an order. Therefore, any spatial disorder that we can find at this time is going to be decisive in the quality of the spelling of our school children, that is, in what the letter is like. To work on segmentation tasks there are many very simple activities, and many of them are even quite fun. I propose two, which I think are the easiest to carry out and are the ones with a more global component. You already know that you can never work in the same way with two different school children because the needs they are going to have, the evolutionary rhythms and many other circumstances never coincide in two people. Therefore, I leave you these two activities. The first one is what we call the robot game. This consists of playing at being a robot and playing at not being a robot. When we play at being a robot, we have to work with our articulation, with our arm as if it were not articulated, that is, we will put it straight and move it. We will make totally stable movements in which we will not articulate the elbow or the wrist or the fingers. Then we will propose different activities such as setting the table, clearing the table, picking up a box and taking it from one place to another. That is, different activities in which you have to use both arms or just one of them, depending on the activity. For example, very interesting with one hand is to bounce a ball without articulating it to later ask it to do the same activity but without being a robot. At the moment when we are not a robot, what we have to ask is that it force that movement, that it force that segmentation and emphasize what segmentation we are requesting it to carry out. For example, if we are making the ball play without segmenting the arm, that is, as if we were a robot without making any type of articulation. What we would be doing in this case now, when dribbling the ball, we would say now you have to leave the part of the arm still and move the forearm a lot so that by exaggerating that movement we will be able to facilitate the segmentation task. This is, after all, what we are looking for with this is its own exception by contrast. That is, we go from not moving anything to making an exaggerated movement. This is bodily learning that is going to be acquired, and that is going to make segmentation much easier for us. Similarly, in this same example of dribbling the ball, we cannot ask that you dribble it with your entire forearm, but rather that you dribble it only with your hand. Obviously, we have to take into account the type of ball we are going to work with, its size and how it bounces. Another activity that is very easy to do at home and that is usually very interesting for these purposes is the snake game. The game of the snake consists of making movements. We can take a pencil, then we have to draw, making small movements that can go with the whole arm as I am doing now. They can go with the wrist and the forearm only, or you can only go with your fingers, moving your fingers, seeing what happens when I write with my fingers. The purpose is to write like this with your fingers, making movements as we are going to do when doing it on a very simple piece of paper. We are going to propose different geometric figures to develop very simple figures. A circle, a triangle, and a square or a rectangle. We are going to stay in them. There, with these tasks, it is very easy to develop good segmentation, which we are going to call interphalangeal segmentation. The segmentation that is going to be between the phalanges of the finger, that the phalanges of these two fingers and the two phalanges of this thumb are going to be super useful in the dominant hand, in the writing hand, to develop an appropriate segmentation of those interphalangeal movements that are so fine, so precise, that you have to work specifically. There are many more segmentation task activities. However, we propose these two activities that are very good. They give very good results, they are very playful, they play well, and they are practically useful for all the school children with whom we work on segmentation tasks. There are more specific tasks that should be valued in a much more concrete way for each specific student. When we deal with a specific dysgraphia, these that we were talking about visual motor coordination, we are going to consider 4 activities that are very simple to carry out that we can do at home at any time. We can do them in class in free time. We can propose them to be in recess or to play with other children at home too, or with siblings or with the family. The first time it is very easy. Magical things really happen when we take the finger paint. We take a large roll of continuous paper and cover the entire floor or cover the wall, and then things start to happen. Here we can do something super interesting, which is what? Very easy. We stain our entire hand and we begin to make very thick movements of the entire arm. Then we move on to shorter moments. We are working with that, and we ask for, here comes the visual motor coordination part, because this is to reinforce the segmentation. What we are going to ask for in this case is to make copies of very large figures. We return again to geometric figures. It would be fantastic now, this would be incredible, if we had a projector and could project a figure that we would have to complete with this finger painting and handling these segmentations. Thick, very large movements, then make smaller, finer figures. That we don't have a projector and we don't have continuous paper, or we can't do it at home. It doesn't matter, we can do it on our own paper and we can make a tracing of a geometric figure. We can put a copy to be carried out. In this case, it will always be much more useful to work on a mold that we are looking at, on which we are working, that is, the tracing. Because eye motor coordination will make it difficult for us to copy that shape, so this activity can end up being somewhat frustrating and loses its practical, playful and fun component, especially while being useful. Then another classic game that we can carry out is that of the ropes. We take a little rope of any color. There are a lot of games on the internet. You have many tutorials on YouTube. We are going to leave on our website, where we talk about eye motor coordination, some activities like these that you can also do because they are really useful. They are very practical to play and do different types of knots, playing to make different types of movements of the ropes using the fingers. In this way we train the visual motor coordination in an excellent way. The same with ropes, also these templates that appear with certain little holes so that we can border or introduce this rope or the thread with that we work. I recommend doing it with a rope. It will be much easier and form a figure that is the one that appears drawn on that cardboard or on that perforated paper. You will also find many resources on the internet, on Pinterest, on YouTube, on any web page. We also leave you resources on our website about it. And then again we come across these ball activities. Ball activities are really helpful in this case. I also leave you, as I told you at the beginning, as we said before in the motor dysgraphia tasks, they are standard activities. Activities that are usually always useful with most school children. Ball activities are endless, that is, there are thousands of types of ball activities. In this case I am going to propose one that is not the most complex, but it is not the simplest either. These balls are the balls that bounce a lot. They are sometimes called bouncy balls, or well, they call it in different ways. They are these tiny, solid balls that you bounce a little bit and give a big jump. Well, with these balls we can do a lot of work. In the first activity we are going to go again. Although this task is not a question of segmentation, we are always going to work with the segmentation to make useful development acquisition progress and that are consistent with those stages that we have to go through. So the first thing we are going to do with this ball movement is to give tiny bounces. We sit on the floor and do them with our whole arm, tiny bounces. Then we do them with the forearm, then we go on to do it with the hand, and then we ask them to do it with a few different fingers. You can do it even with 2 fingers. These last 2 fingers, 4 and 5, are tricky because they don't articulate independently. Therefore, those are going to be more complicated and are going to generate more frustration. But we are interested above all that visual motor coordination is stimulated based on these 3 fingers, which are the writing fingers, which participate in the writing process. These activities are fun and can be played very well at home at any time. Do not forget to watch these videos that I leave here, or we will link them in the description of the video, and in the first comment I will also leave you a few examples of pages that you can visit with these videos on spatial organization, with videos on the body schema, on laterality, and especially the video of progressive engravings. This is a super interesting video because it proposes an activity to stimulate visual motor coordination with plasticine with sticks or with a pencil. It can also be done, and another series of activities to work on the independence of these 3 fingers, from the writing fingers of the dominant hand. Do not miss it, I recommend it, it is very interesting to see it. So far we come with the video in which we talk about dysgraphia. I hope that you have found it interesting, that it has helped you to learn new things, especially to focus on a possible re-education or to assess writing with a dysgraphic character, and that from now on, when you see bad handwriting, always observe what is happening at the time of writing. Thank you very much for watching this video. I invite you to subscribe to our channel because we will continue uploading new videos. Soon we will have a live show in which we are going to do pelota activities, in which we are going to present these pelota activities that we can do not only to work on the dysgraphy but for a lot of things. Subscribe, activate notifications so you don't miss anything on the channel, and see you in future videos.
See you later.